Hey guys, tonight we head back to the 1840s, back when road trip meant 6 months of walking beside a wagon full of squeaky wheels, salted pork, and wildly misplaced optimism. You're standing at the edge of Independence, Missouri, sun blazing overhead, the horizon stretching like a dare. Ahead lies 2,000 miles of prairie, desert, and mountain. Behind you, civilization hums faintly. A blacksmith's hammer, a church bell, maybe your mother calling one last, "Don't forget to write." You probably won't survive this. But hey, let's not ruin the mood too early. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Because the Oregon Trail waits for no one, not even the clock. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You climb into the wagon, the wood creaking like an old man's knees. The smell hits you first. Tar, leather, molasses, and unwashed everything. The driver, probably your cousin Jed, flicks the reins and shouts something about destiny, but the oxen just blinks slowly, unimpressed. The wheels lurch, and the road ahead is nothing but brown. Brown dirt, brown grass, brown hope. Historians still argue whether the Oregon Trail began as a genuine migration of farmers or as a fever dream of national ego. Either way, the result was the same. Thousands of ordinary people chasing an extraordinary mirage called the West. They came in families, in church groups, sometimes alone, each one convinced they were about to carve out a new Eden. Spoiler, the only thing they carved was wagon ruts, deep enough to still scar the earth today. Within the first mile, you're sweating, not the romantic kind of frontier sweat. This is the sticky, dusty, I might regret my life choices sweat. The sun sits on your shoulders like a hot skillet. You look around, thinking, how bad can this really get? Somewhere ahead, a child coughs. Somewhere behind, a wheel already squeals. You'll learn soon enough that those sounds, the cough, the squeal, are the soundtrack of the trail. The first mainstream fact drops in quietly. Around 400,000 people took this journey between the 1830s and the 1860s. Not all at once, of course. It was more of a rolling wave. Each new spring, wagons lined up at Independence, or St. Joseph or Council Bluffs, itching for that mythical Oregon soil. They called themselves emigrants, not pioneers. Pioneers sound like they know what they're doing. Emigrants are just leaving something behind. A fringe tidbit, though. Some travelers carried tiny glass bottles of mercury-based medicine, blue mass, they called it, believing it cured everything from melancholy to indigestion. In reality, it slowly poisoned them, 1 teaspoon at a time. You'll hear more about bad cures than good ones out here. Your wagon train stretches a half-mile long, maybe more. Families chatter, oxen snort, someone's dog barks at everything, including its own shadow. The smell of bacon fat mingles with manure and smoke. Children wave sticks, pretending to be rifles, reenacting stories of heroism before the real thing gets ugly. A woman hums a hymn under her breath. The air feels thick with both excitement and dread. The weird emotional smoothie of, we're doomed, but it's fine. And it is fine for now. You tell yourself that the hardships are exaggerated, that the stories of starvation and disease are just campfire tales meant to scare off the faint-hearted. You'll see rivers, plains, maybe even buffalo. It'll be like a moving painting. Maybe you'll keep a journal, sketch the sunsets, collect pretty rocks. Then the wagon hits a rut so deep your spine cracks like kindling, and the fantasy leaks out like warm molasses. You start to notice how everything takes time. Hitching oxen, 20 minutes. Fixing a wheel, an hour. Cooking breakfast, 3 hours if it rains, which it will. You think about how this entire journey is basically a months-long slow cooker of boredom, sweat, and logistical nightmares. It's kind of poetic, if poetry had blisters. The first night, you make camp near the Kansas River. Fires pop like gunshots. The stars come out so thick, they look fake, as if painted on glass. Everyone eats quickly, nervously. The men check rifles. The women fold blankets. The kids chase fireflies. There's laughter here, forced, but real. Because for now, it still feels like adventure. Somewhere in the darkness, a fiddle starts up. Thin, reedy, but comforting. Someone jokes that if you can survive the music, you can survive the trail. That's your first of 3 jokes tonight. Because humor, you'll find, is the only currency that doesn't run out on the Oregon Trail. The second joke, you hear someone claim that mosquitoes were as big as sparrows. That's definitely an exaggeration. But after your third bite, you're not so sure. By midnight, you're wrapped in a blanket, pretending to sleep, while the prairie wind whistles through the wagons. You can hear the oxen shifting, the quiet murmur of people dreaming about home. Every shadow looks like movement. Every sound could be something wild. The air smells of grass and smoke and possibility. You realize that you've crossed an invisible line tonight, between safety and something else entirely. Tomorrow, the world will open wide and unmerciful, and you'll still have 2,000 miles to go. The funny thing is, you volunteered for this. You believed in it. That's what makes the Oregon Trail such a perfect microcosm of human stubbornness. Everyone knew it was dangerous, and they went anyway. You roll over, listening to the fire crackle down to embers. You think about how, a century from now, school kids will play computer games where you die of dysentery and laugh. But out here, it's not a joke. Out here, every cough, every creek crossing, every wrong turn could be the end. Sleep finally comes. Not peaceful, exactly, but heavy. You dream of green valleys, wide rivers, and gold light on distant mountains. For now, those dreams are enough to keep you moving when the sun rises again. Because tomorrow, the real journey begins. The roosters of independence have barely crowed when you're already knee-deep in chaos. Today is packing day, and somehow, everyone in your wagon train has become a self-proclaimed expert on logistics. You stand beside the wooden beast that will be your home, pantry, and prison for the next 6 months. A Conestoga-style wagon that looks more like a floating ark than a vehicle. Its white canvas gleams faintly in the morning light. But you already know it's going to turn brown, then gray, then probably a patchwork of regret. You've got to fit everything you will need for half a year into this space. Food, tools, clothing, medicine, and whatever sentimental nonsense your family refuses to leave behind. Bacon and beans? Check. Coffee and salt? Essential. A piano? Sure. Why not? Until the first hill, when you'll discover gravity's strong opinions on Victorian hobbies. Historians still argue whether emigrants actually overpacked out of ignorance or fear. Some claim people genuinely didn't understand how far 2,000 miles really was. Others say they just couldn't let go of civilized comforts. Either way, every wagon train began with the same sound. Arguments, loud, sweaty, and full of second thoughts. "Leave the rocker, Ma," someone shouts. "It's for the baby," another insists. You silently wonder how much the baby weighs compared to that ridiculous chair. There's always one family dragging furniture like they're moving cross-country by Uber. You, being the sensible one, pack mostly food, clothes, and ammunition. The holy trinity of frontier survival. Here, it's a mainstream fact for you. A typical wagon could carry about 2,500 pounds of cargo, pulled by 4 to 6 oxen. Not horses. Those were too fragile and prone to drama. Oxen were the SUVs of the prairie world. Slow, strong, and utterly unbothered by your emotional turmoil. But you quickly learn the cruel math of weight. Every extra pound now becomes a potential death sentence. Later, when the animals collapse from exhaustion or thirst, you load barrels of flour, sacks of dried beans, jugs of vinegar, and a mountain of hardtack so dense it could double as construction material. Somewhere in the chaos, a tin of gunpowder rolls under the wagon wheel, and you make a mental note not to camp next to that family. The quirky tidbit of the day. Some travelers swore by packing pickles, not for flavor, though they probably helped, but because people believed vinegar prevented scurvy. There's no ocean here, but someone's aunt heard it from a cousin who knew a sailor, and that's all the science anyone needs in 1846. As you tighten ropes and hammer nails, the morning sun climbs higher, baking everyone's patience. Sweat streaks through the dust on your arms. You hear snippets of conversations. Who's in charge? Which route to take? Whether you should leave now or wait for the weather to break. Someone's ox is already limping. Someone else has misplaced a child. You realize that the Oregon Trail begins not with courage, but with confusion. By midday, the supply agents wander through the camp like carnival barkers, selling everything you forgot: spare axles, wheel grease, dried fruit, coffee grinders. You buy extra rope, because rope feels like the kind of thing that solves problems, even if you don't know which ones yet. Then the wagons line up. It's the moment everyone's been waiting for, but nobody looks excited anymore. The oxen snort, the drivers shout, and suddenly the train lurches forward in a jerky parade of creaking wood and flapping canvas. You're moving. The wheels carve into the mud like signatures, and the town's last sounds fade behind you. Hammer strikes, barking dogs, a blacksmith calling goodbye. Civilization dissolves in the rear view of your imagination. By evening, the novelty has worn off. You stop at a meadow to camp. Setting up feels like a circus act, choreographed by amateurs. You learn to circle the wagons, not for dramatic defense like in the movies, but to pen in the animals and block the wind. A cook fire flickers, and everyone begins experimenting with the art of boiling everything they own into one questionable stew. The air smells of bacon, fat, and ash. Someone burns the coffee, someone else drops a pan in the grass and pretends it's flavoring. You laugh because it's either that or cry. That's joke number 1 tonight. Trail coffee has 3 flavors: burnt, gritty, and regret. You're assigned watch duty. The prairie spreads out in all directions, flat as a thought, half finished. You can hear crickets, coyotes, and occasionally the nervous laughter of people pretending they're fine. Every creak of the wagon feels like a whisper of warning. You think about what you left behind: feather beds, polished floors, actual plates that weren't made of tin. You also think about what's ahead: mountains, rivers, and the promise of land so fertile you could drop a seed and grow a dream. Hope and dread braid together like rope under your hands. The night grows colder. The oxen shuffle and snort softly. Someone in a nearby wagon is telling a story about a woman last season who brought her mother-in-law S-clock across the plains. Halfway to Oregon, she chucked it into a ravine, declaring that if she couldn't have punctuality, nobody could. You silently salute her. That's joke number 2. Before bed, you do one last inspection, checking that nothing's come loose, that the wagon canvas is tied tight, that no raccoon has gotten into the flour barrel. The stars look brighter than any you've ever seen, sharp as glass. For a fleeting second, it feels magical again. Historians still argue whether this sense of optimism was genuine or just a necessary delusion. Could so many people really believe they were destined to succeed where others failed? Or did they simply have no choice but to believe it? Out here, doubt weighs as much as furniture, and you've got no room left for either. You crawl under the wagon to sleep, wrapped in a scratchy blanket that smells faintly of lard and homesickness. The ground is hard, the air restless. A mosquito whines near your ear, and you swat half-heartedly, too tired to care. As your eyes close, you think, tomorrow, you'll be lighter. You'll find the rhythm. You'll get good at this. Spoiler, you won't. Morning rises pale and dusty, like someone forgot to turn the world's brightness up all the way. You wake to the clank of harness buckles, the groan of wagon wheels, and a faint smell of something burning that's definitely not on purpose. Someone's breakfast has caught fire again. A fine omen for a day of progress. You stretch your legs, brush off the night's layer of grit, and step into the blur of motion that is a wagon train preparing to move. The road, if you can call it that, is less a path and more a series of ruts pretending to be geography. Grass, flattened by 1,000 wheels. Mud hardened into ribs that jolt your bones each time the wagon lurches. You grab the sideboard to steady yourself, pretending you don't mind. The oxen grunt. The air smells like heat and manure, a fragrance the prairie seems to wear proudly. Historians still argue whether the Trail S first miles through Kansas and Nebraska were the easiest or the most deceptive. Some say these gentle plains lulled travelers into false confidence. Others think the monotony broke spirits faster than hardship ever could. Either way, you're beginning to sense that the West isn't T opening its arms. It is folding them, waiting to see if you deserve to pass. By mid-morning, the first argument breaks out. Someone's ox has wandered into another team's space, tangling yokes and tempers. Voices rise, hands wave. Somebody drops a rifle, which is promptly declared unloaded, though the nervous glances suggest otherwise. You watch from the sidelines, chewing on a piece of jerky that tastes like salted regret, and realize that every wagon train is just a rolling neighborhood without fences, complete with noisy neighbors and unspoken resentments. The quirky tidbit of the day: some emigrants carried what they called prairie shoes, essentially wooden sandals with leather straps, meant to keep their boots from wearing out. They looked ridiculous, made walking worse, and still show up in archaeological digs today, as proof that desperation can also be creative. You try not to laugh, imagining an entire wagon train flopping along like a herd of mismatched horses. The land changes slowly, but your body changes faster. Your shoulders ache from walking beside the wagon. The sun etches a new line of red across your neck every afternoon. Your lips crack, your hands stiffen, and your feet, well, let's not talk about your feet. You learn to tie scraps of cloth around the worst blisters and keep walking, because stopping isn't an option. Around noon, you meet your first river crossing, a shallow tributary of the Kansas River, more mud than water. The wagons roll through one at a time, wheels sinking with every creak. Children cheer at the sight of frogs leaping from the reeds. It's almost fun until someone's ox panics and veers sideways, dumping half a barrel of flour into the current. Everyone groans in unison. You tell yourself it's a small loss, though deep down, you know that barrel represented a week's worth of meals. There's a rhythm to this misery. Travel, stop, cook, argue, sleep, repeat. You begin to recognize the other families, not by name, but by sound. The way the Miller wagon S-wheel squeaks, the constant barking of the Haskins dog, the hymn the Whitakers hum whenever they're nervous, which is always. The trail becomes a kind of moving community, held together by dust and shared exhaustion. That's when the first real injury happens. A young man, barely more than a boy, slips while hitching an ox and breaks his arm. There's no doctor here, just a neighbor who claims to know a little about bones. They splint it with 2 sticks and a strip of shirt, then move on as if nothing happened. It's a quiet reminder. Out here, there's no emergency room, just resourcefulness and a prayer. You try to lighten the mood with tonight, S first joke. Guess the good news is, he won't have to take watch duty. Nobody laughs much, but it earns a few weary smirks. Humor, you learn, is the cheapest form of medicine, second only to whiskey, which is already running low. By sunset, you've gone maybe 15 miles. It feels like a victory, though the map says you've barely scratched the surface of the continent. You camp near a stream, build small fires, and share stories of home. Someone talks about the orchards back east. Someone else recalls the smell of rain on city cobblestones. The memories hang in the air like smoke, sweet and sad. The prairie at night is endless. The wind sighs through the grass in long, shivering waves. Somewhere, a coyote yips, answered by another farther away, until it sounds like the land itself is laughing softly at your tiny flicker of civilization. You stare into the fire, mesmerized by the way sparks twist upward and vanish into blackness. Historians still argue whether these nightly camps were democratic utopias or fragile dictatorships. Some wagon trains elected captains and held votes. Others followed the loudest or most armed person available. In your group, Captain Harlan runs the show, a broad-shouldered man who speaks in commandments and believes God personally assigned him to manage your collective suffering. You've decided it's best not to argue with him before coffee. Speaking of coffee, that's your second joke tonight. Trail coffee is strong enough to make a mule dance or die trying. It earns a genuine laugh from someone, maybe because the alternative is despair. As you drift toward sleep, you think about how strange it is that the farther you go from civilization, the more civilized you become, at least in routine. Every task has purpose now. Fetching water, tending fires, mending canvas. There's a rhythm to survival. almost comforting if you don't think too hard about the stakes. Then you hear thunder, not close yet, but rolling in from the west like an unwelcome guest. You can smell rain on the wind, sharp, metallic. Tomorrow, the sky will open and the mud will rise to meet you. For now, though, you pull the blanket tighter, watch lightning flicker on the horizon, and whisper to yourself that it can't get much worse. Spoiler, it absolutely can. Rain doesn't arrive as a gentle drizzle. It slams. One moment, you're half awake, listening to a bird somewhere, trying to sing through the gray dawn. The next, the sky opens like a busted barrel, and water comes at you sideways in sheets so thick you can't tell where the air ends and the earth begins. The canvas above your wagon starts to sag. A steady drip forms right above your pillow. You shuffle to the side, muttering something unholy under your breath. The oxen groan in the dark. Someone outside yells, "Tie down the tarps." Someone else slips, falls, and curses loudly enough to wake the entire camp. And just like that, the day begins. Muddy, miserable, and far too wet for optimism. Historians still argue whether spring or summer was the best time to start the Oregon Trail. Leave too early, and the rivers are swollen with meltwater. Too late, and you risk snow in the mountains. Either way, weather rules everything out here. You can't schedule the sky. Within minutes, your boots are useless. The road becomes pudding. Wagon wheels sink, oxen slip, and your own legs feel like lead. You trudge beside the wagon, rain dripping off your hat brim, watching rivulets carve miniature rivers down the ruts. Each step makes a sound like the world chewing slowly. A mainstream fact for you. Emigrants often called this stretch of the trail the Sea of Mud. It could take hours just to travel a single mile. Oxen sometimes collapsed mid-step and had to be yanked free by sheer force, their hooves making sucking noises as they tore from the muck. You don't forget a sound like that. A fringe tidbit, though, one you'd almost laugh at if you weren't a tea knee-deep in sludge. Some travelers swore rubbing bacon grease on wagon wheels kept them from sticking. Others used molasses. Neither worked, of course, but the prairie probably smelled fantastic for miles. You hunch your shoulders and push. The wagon lurches forward, maybe 3 feet, before sinking again. Every muscle in your back protests. Your hands slip on the wet wood. The rain seeps through your coat, down your collar, into your bones. You can't tell where you end, and the weather begins. By noon, everyone looks half drowned. Fires won't light. Flour turns to paste. Blankets cling to skin like wet parchment. You try to laugh, but it comes out as a cough. Someone jokes that this is God's way of washing off the city, and that earns a half-hearted chuckle. There's your first joke tonight, courtesy of the universe. Mud changes everything. It swallows progress and morale in equal measure. Children cry because their shoes are stuck. Adults snap because they can't fix it. You see a woman trying to scoop rainwater out of her skillet while her husband argues with a wheel stuck fast. Every minute feels like 2, every hour like a small eternity. And yet, there's beauty in it. Strange, stubborn beauty. The prairie glows under the storm, all silver and smoke. Lightning crawls across the sky, branching like veins. For a second, everything is illuminated. The wagons, the people, the endless stretch of land. Then it's gone again, leaving only darkness and rain. You find a patch of high ground to stop for the night. The wagons form a half circle, not because of danger this time, but to block the wind. You pull wet blankets over yourself and listen to the rain drum on the canvas. Someone in a nearby wagon starts singing softly, an old hymn about endurance, or maybe stubbornness. You can't tell the difference anymore. Historians still argue whether these people truly believed they were divinely guided or just too deep in to admit defeat. Faith, out here, is both a comfort and a trap. You whisper a prayer yourself, not for deliverance, but for dry socks. Your second joke of the night comes courtesy of one of the younger travelers. If this keeps up, we'll reach Oregon by boat. Nobody laughs much, but the sound of rain almost makes it funny. As dawn breaks, the storm finally sputters out. The air smells like earth and wet wood. The trail behind you glistens like a ribbon of brown glass. Everywhere you look, things are broken. Barrels burst open, flour turned to paste, a wagon wheel cracked clean through, but the oxen still stand, steaming gently in the cool morning light. Somehow, you keep going. There's a strange peace in the aftermath. The sky clears to a washed-out blue, and the world feels newly made, messy, but alive. You wring water from your clothes and start the day's walk, feeling the sun on your shoulders again. It's amazing how quickly misery resets to routine. A mile down the road, you pass something half buried in the mud. A child's toy carved from wood. A small horse missing one leg. You don't know who dropped it, but you imagine the child crying as it slipped away. The parents too tired to turn back. The trail is already collecting the first of its ghosts. You pause, just long enough to breathe. The prairie stretches ahead, green now where it was brown yesterday. Birds flit between puddles. For a moment, you can almost believe this is adventure again. Then your boot squelches into a fresh puddle, and reality returns. That night, the campfire smoke rises thin into the clearing sky. Everyone moves slower now, tired, wary, a little humbled. The rain has taken something from you all, the illusion of control. Out here, the world reminds you who's in charge. And spoiler, it's not you. You sip a cup of weak coffee, the ground's floating like lost hopes, and let the warmth spread through your fingers. The stars are back, scattered bright across the black like spilled salt. You think about how each one looks, steady, unchanging, while you're just a small, muddy blur passing beneath them. Guess we're clean now, someone says, wringing out their shirt. You laugh quietly. Your third joke, the soft kind that keeps you sane. The fire pops, the night sighs, and you drift off with damp boots and a dry sense of humor. Tomorrow will bring sun and dust and another chance to be miserable in a whole new way. Because the trail, as you're learning, always finds a way to reinvent suffering. The next morning brings sunlight sharp enough to sting your eyes. Everything, grass, wagons, even people, steams in the early warmth like a giant breakfast no one ordered. The storm has passed, but the aftermath lingers. Puddles deep as bathtubs, mud clinging to wheels, flour paste hardened into concrete. You're grateful for the dry sky until you realize the rain has awakened a new horror. Flies, they swarm like gossip at a family reunion. Every step, every bite of food, every attempt to exist is accompanied by their tiny, relentless buzzing. You wave them off, swat at nothing, curse politely under your breath. The oxen twitch their tails miserably. It's a symphony of irritation that sets the tone for what's to come. Because today, you learn the true meaning of trail cuisine. You thought you packed well. Barrels of flour, salted pork, beans, maybe even a precious tin of coffee. But food on the Oregon Trail has a way of turning into dust, mold, or something unidentifiable within a week. Bacon goes rancid, flour gets wet, coffee spills, and everything you own now carries the faint scent of mud and desperation. Historians still argue whether the average immigrant diet was more monotonous or more malnourished. Records suggest it was both. Each person consumed roughly a pound of flour a day, half that in bacon, and just enough dried fruit to remember what sweetness once tasted like. Vegetables were a rumor. Vitamins were a fantasy. You sit beside the morning fire, gnawing on a piece of hardtack that could double as self-defense. It's bred in the same way a brick is a pillow. Technically, yes, but not in spirit. The trick, people say, is to soak it in coffee first. That softens it enough to chew, though it also makes your drink taste like regret. The quirky tidbit of the day. Some travelers carved patterns into their hardtack. Names, initials, even tiny hearts. They called it biscuit art. Archaeologists have actually found pieces of it still intact 150 years later, which says more about hardtack's durability than its flavor. You munch thoughtfully, the biscuit fighting back, and listen to the sounds of camp life. Spoons clanging, babies crying, oxen chewing cud with enviable serenity. The trail feels endless again, but at least it's dry. Dust, you'll find, is just mud reincarnated with confidence. By mid-morning, the wagons roll forward. You walk beside yours, occasionally riding inside when the ruts smooth out. The air smells faintly of burnt bacon and coffee grounds. You joke that you'll never crave either again. Joke number 1 today. And everyone groans in agreement. Hunger changes people. By week 3, appetites adjust to the rhythm of scarcity. You ration everything. Flour by the cup, salt by the pinch, coffee by the cruelest measure imaginable. Someone mentions a rumor about trading with nearby forts for fresh produce, and the idea sounds as far-fetched as finding a Starbucks out here. Still, you adapt. Lunch becomes whatever you can make over a small flame. Bacon fried to leather, beans that never quite soften, and coffee so gritty you could chew it. Someone tries to make soup, but the wind blows ash into the pot, and nobody complains. It adds texture. Historians still argue whether immigrants genuinely enjoyed this simplicity or were just too starved for alternatives. Some diaries gush about wholesome meals and brisk mornings, while others detail scurvy, tooth loss, and the tragic saga of coffee withdrawal. Truth probably lived somewhere in the middle, right between gallows humor and survival instinct. That night, around the fire, you learn about flour pudding, a dish that involves mixing water, flour, and a pinch of salt into something resembling edible glue. You swallow it anyway, because it's warm and filling and vaguely tastes like not dying. Someone quips, if it moves, we eat it. If it doesn't, we boil it. Joke number 2 earns genuine laughter, weak but grateful. The prairie stretches out in every direction, deceptively peaceful under the sunset. You watch the horizon shimmer and wonder what the next meal will be. Maybe a miracle. Wild berries, rabbit, fish from a river you haven't seen yet. Maybe just more beans. Probably beans. The oxen graze quietly nearby, their breath visible in the cooling air. You find a strange comfort in their calm. They don't complain. They don't worry about rations or spoiled meat. They just move forward, slow and certain. You envy them more than you'd admit. And then, a small commotion. One of the wagons ahead has lost a barrel. The lid popped off during a rut, scattering coffee beans across the dirt. For one glorious minute, people scramble to pick them up like treasure. You crouch and grab a handful yourself, the aroma hitting your nose with nostalgic violence. Someone jokes about starting a trail bucks. That's your third joke, and it actually gets applause. Later, as night settles in, you sip a thin brew made from those rescued beans. It's bitter, but it feels like civilization in a tin cup. You close your eyes and imagine warm kitchens, real bread, the sound of a spoon clinking gently against porcelain. The stars shimmer above like frost, indifferent but steady. The fire crackles, and a coyote calls somewhere far off. You realize hunger isn't just about food. It's about everything you miss. Comfort, certainty, the illusion of control. Out here, satisfaction comes in tiny doses. A full stomach, a dry blanket, a shared laugh. Historians still argue whether these small comforts sustain the emigrants more than faith or luck. Maybe they did. Maybe this, the ritual of eating badly together, was the glue that held the human spirit intact. As you settle into your blanket, the last of the firelight flickering over your face, you tell yourself tomorrow's meals will be better. They won't, of course, but the thought is enough to make you smile before sleep takes you. Because out here, hope is the one thing nobody has to ration. The morning begins with coughing. Not one or two people, everyone. It echoes across the camp like a grim harmony, rising from every wagon and bedroll. You pull yourself upright, throat raw, nose stinging from smoke and dust, and realize the Oregon Trail's next great trial has arrived. Sickness. You've been expecting it, of course. You've seen the signs. Children too tired to play, adults who stop laughing, the way people start whispering instead of talking when someone coughs too long. Still, nothing quite prepares you for the smell of illness. Sour, heavy, unmistakably human. Historians still argue whether disease killed more emigrants than accidents or starvation. But the numbers tell a brutal truth. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, scurvy, smallpox, invisible enemies that required no gunpowder, no warning, just a sip of dirty water, and the countdown began. The morning chores go on anyway. Oxen must be yoked, wheels greased, fires stoked. A woman stumbles while carrying a bucket and collapses in the mud. Her husband runs to her side, panic flashing across his face. You pretend not to watch, but everyone sees. Within minutes, whispers spread like sparks. Cholera, the quirky tidbit of the day. Travelers sometimes blamed disease on night air, or even supernatural causes. One 1850 diary describes a man burning gunpowder under his wagon to cleanse the air. Spoiler, it did not work, unless you count smelling worse as victory. You move through the camp, helping where you can, handing out clean rags, fetching water, trying not to think about how that same water might be killing you. The Kansas River looked clear enough, but so did the dozens of graves you've passed along its banks. By noon, the train stops early. The captain declares a rest day. Nobody argues. People set up makeshift tents for the sick. You see a child with glassy eyes, her small body trembling under a blanket. Her mother strokes her hair, humming an old lullaby you can barely hear over the wind. It's the kind of sound that sinks into your ribs. You eat a lunch you barely taste. Beans again, with a side of anxiety. Nobody jokes this time. Even the usual chatter dies out. The air feels heavier, as if the prairie itself is holding its breath. A mainstream fact: the most feared illness on the trail was cholera. It struck fast and hard, vomiting, diarrhea, dehydration so severe that skin shrank against bones. In bad seasons, entire wagon trains lost half their people before reaching Wyoming. There were no cures, just superstition and stubbornness. You think about that as you refill your canteen, watching sediment swirl at the bottom. You hesitate, then you drink anyway, because thirst wins every time. The first grave of the day appears before sundown. It's not the first you've seen, but it's the first with a face you recognize. A young man, barely 20. He joked 2 nights ago about marrying one of them Oregon girls. Now, his body lies wrapped in a quilt beside the trail. The burial is quick. There's no priest, just silence and a few murmured prayers. Someone marks the spot with a wooden cross carved from a wagon spoke. The train moves on before the ground settles. That night, the wind howls. You can't sleep. Every cough around you sounds sharper, closer. You wrap your blanket tighter, trying not to imagine the invisible things crawling through your body. You remember hearing that whiskey kills the germs. You drink a little. It doesn't help, but it numbs the edges of fear. Historians still argue whether alcohol or herbal remedies did more harm than good on the trail. Some mixtures contained opium, mercury, or lead. Yet, for many travelers, belief was the real medicine. Believing you could survive was half the cure. Around midnight, lightning flashes on the horizon. You count the seconds until thunder. 1, 2, 3, then the crack. You smile grimly. The storm sounds cleaner than the coughing. You think of the doctors back east, men with shiny instruments and neat handwriting. Out here, medicine looks like whatever's left in a bottle. You recall someone mentioning a miracle cure made from turpentine and sugar. You decide not to test it. By dawn, the camp smells of smoke, sweat, and sickness. A few wagons stay behind to bury their dead. The rest move on slowly, each creak of the wheel sounding like an apology. The prairie looks no different, but everything feels changed, thinner, quieter, as if the land itself is mourning. You notice how people stop walking close together now. Every cough earns distance. Every handshake becomes a nod. Even laughter, when it comes, sounds suspicious. Fear is contagious too. Then, something unexpected happens. A woman in another wagon stands up, pale but defiant, and begins singing. A hymn, steady and low. One by one, others join in. The sound grows, lifting over the camp like a fragile net of hope. You hum along, your voice cracking but real. For a moment, it feels like defiance. Your first joke of the night slips out after the song ends. If the sickness doesn't kill us, the singing might. It earns a few chuckles, the kind that hurt but heal a little too. Later, as the camp settles, someone passes you a slice of fried dough made from leftover flour. It tastes smoky, oily, and perfect. You chew slowly, savoring the illusion of normalcy. It's strange how small kindnesses matter more out here than grand gestures. A crust of bread, a shared story, a moment of laughter. They're all medicine in their own right. Historians still argue whether emigrants viewed death as tragedy or inevitability. In diaries, many wrote with eerie calm about losing family. The Lord has taken them home. Maybe faith was armor. Maybe numbness was. You can't tell the difference anymore. As you lie down, the stars blur above you. You think about all the lives lost, to invisible things, diseases that don't care about courage or dreams. The prairie doesn't remember names. It only keeps the dust. You whisper one last dry joke to yourself. At least I won't die of boredom. It's weak, but it's something. The night swallows your laughter, carrying it somewhere west, toward the next tragedy waiting on the trail. By now, you've stopped pretending death is rare. It's not dramatic anymore. It's routine. You wake up, check the sky, yoke the oxen, and step over graves that weren't there yesterday. Some are marked with rough wooden crosses, others with nothing at all. The trail has become a string of silent headstones, each one carved from exhaustion. Historians still argue whether more people died from disease or accidents, but numbers feel meaningless when you've buried someone yourself. You've lost count. The land keeps its own tally. Fresh mounds of dirt, scraps of fabric, fluttering like ghost flags. You start noticing how people talk around death, not about it. They say things like, she has gone ahead, or he is resting now. Nobody says dead. The word feels too sharp, too final. Out here, you learn to sand down the edges of grief just to keep moving. The first burial of the morning is quiet. A woman named Ellen, fever took her overnight. Her husband kneels beside the shallow grave, hands trembling as he presses her wedding ring into the dirt. The train doesn't linger. Within an hour, the wagons creak forward again, leaving him to catch up when he's ready. He never does. The quirky tidbit of the day. Emigrants sometimes disguised graves to prevent wolves or grave robbers from disturbing them. They'd run wagons over fresh soil to flatten it, or even plant flowers on top to make it look like any other patch of prairie. It worked, mostly, though a few unlucky travelers later mistook those disguised graves for perfect camping spots. You try not to think about that tonight. As the day stretches on, a strange numbness settles over everyone. Children play in the dust again. Someone hums. The living learn quickly to protect themselves with motion. You shovel, walk, repair, eat, anything but dwell. At noon, you stop near a creek that looks harmless enough, shallow and bright under the sun. You fill your canteen, then freeze when you see something caught on a branch downstream. A bonnet, torn, pale, swaying gently. Someone's past, floating in the current. You look away fast. You eat lunch in silence. Hardtack and beans. You don't complain. Nobody does. You're all thinking the same thing. At least I'm still here. Historians still argue whether emigrants buried their dead close to the trail out of convenience or reverence. Some say it was to keep the dead within sight. Others because the wagons couldn't risk detours. Whatever the reason, each grave feels like punctuation, periods in a story that refuses to stop. That evening, campfire smoke rises thin and gray. The talk turns practical. How far to the next fort? Whether to trade for more flour? How many oxen are lame? Nobody mentions Ellen, but when someone passes around a tin of coffee, there's one extra cup poured, set beside the fire, untouched. You don't ask. You just sip your own, staring into the flames until they blur. Then, because the silence is unbearable, you let out tonight's first joke. We've buried more people than we've met. Guess that makes us the friendliest train on the prairie. It earns nervous laughter, but laughter nonetheless. Out here, humor's the only shovel that digs you out of despair. Later, you take watch duty. The moon is low, a thin slice of silver, barely lighting the ruts ahead. You walk along the wagons, boots whispering through dry grass. Somewhere, an owl calls. The air feels thick, like even the night is tired. You pause near a small mound beside the trail, one of many, and whisper a simple, "Sorry," not for anything specific, just because it feels right. You wonder if anyone will remember you this way. A mark in the dirt, a name carved into wood. Maybe, maybe not, but you realize something then. The Oregon Trail isn't really about getting to Oregon. It's about surviving long enough to matter. Near midnight, a man from another wagon collapses. No warning, just drops. His wife screams. Others rush in with lanterns. You help carry him to the firelight. He's breathing shallow, his face gray. Someone says heart failure. Someone else says exhaustion. You just see another human slipping away under the same stars you're standing beneath. You try a few things: water, whiskey, prayers. But by dawn, he's gone. His wife insists on a proper burial, and the captain gives her an hour. An hour. She places his hat on the fresh mound, kisses the dirt, and climbs back into the wagon without a word. Historians still argue whether these quick farewells made grief easier or harder. Diaries suggest both. Some claimed the constant motion dulled pain. Others said it hollowed them out entirely. You feel both hollow and numb now, a walking paradox in muddy boots. As the train moves again, the prairie opens wide and endless. It's beautiful. You'll admit that. The grass ripples like ocean waves. Sunlight breaks through the clouds, painting everything gold. It's almost enough to make you believe the journey's worth it. Almost. Then the wind shifts, carrying the faint scent of decay from somewhere behind. You swallow hard and keep walking. That night, camp feels quieter than usual. Someone plays a fiddle, a slow, mournful tune. You sit beside the fire, watching sparks rise like tiny souls. For once, nobody jokes, not even you. Silence feels sacred tonight. Still, as you lie down and pull your blanket tight, one thought drifts through your mind. The trail takes, but it also teaches. You've learned how strong you are, how small too. You've learned to look death in the face and still eat breakfast the next morning. You've learned that survival isn't courage, it's habit. Before sleep claims you, you whisper your third joke softly into the dark. At least the grave digging keeps us fit. It's morbid, sure, but the chuckle that escapes your lips is real. Because if you can still laugh out here, you're still alive. The morning sun finds you half awake, the sky already painted in layers of orange and lavender. You have started measuring time not by dates, but by the smell of the air and the soreness in your legs. Today smells like dust and ash. That means dry plains ahead, days of choking grit and endless, rattling monotony. You pack up camp with motions that have become muscle memory. Fold the blankets, check the axles, count the oxen. It's all automatic, the rhythm of survival. But today, something different stirs the camp. A faint rumble in the distance, like thunder, but steadier, heavier. You squint across the shimmering prairie until you see it. A herd of bison. Hundreds, maybe thousands, rolling across the horizon like a moving continent. For a moment, everyone just stares. The ground vibrates under your boots. It's terrifying and beautiful. The kind of sight that makes you feel small enough to vanish. The captain yells for calm. No shouting, no sudden movements. The wagons halt. You watch as the herd passes less than a mile away, brown bodies glinting in the sunlight. dust clouds rising behind them like smoke from some ancient furnace. You feel the wind of it, the heat of living thunder. When the last bison disappear into the haze, someone mutters, "That's more meat than we'll ever see again." He's right. The idea of food, fresh, abundant, real, hangs in the air like temptation. Historians still argue whether emigrants hunted bison frequently or avoided them to conserve ammunition. Some diaries brag about feasts of roasted meat. Others warn that shooting too close to the herd could spark a stampede. Either way, one thing's certain. Where there were bison, there were stories. The quirky tidbit of the day. Some travelers claimed that bison could sense human arrogance, that if you boasted too loudly before the hunt, the animals would vanish like smoke. Superstitious nonsense, maybe, but out here, you've seen stranger things. After the herd, the silence feels unnatural. The prairie stretches empty again, just wind and dust, and that faint, haunting smell of sage. You start walking, the trail crunching beneath your boots, each step releasing little puffs of powder. By midday, the dust becomes unbearable. It coats your skin, fills your nose, grits between your teeth. Every breath tastes like chalk. The oxen's ribs glisten with sweat and mud, their sides rising in ragged rhythm. You can tell where you end, and the trail begins. Everything is the same color of sunburnt brown. Your first joke of the day. Congratulations. You've become one with the prairie. Literally, nobody laughs. They're too busy coughing. Historians still argue whether the dust storms were worse than the rains earlier on the trail. Survivors describe them as suffocating clouds that blotted out the sun, sometimes lasting for hours. Some called them sand blizzards. You get why. The wind picks up now, whipping grit into your face, stinging your eyes until they water. Someone wraps a scarf around your head, like a bandit, and you laugh weakly. You probably look ridiculous, but it helps. You trudge on, squinting through the haze. Every step a small rebellion against the land itself. That evening, you finally reach a patch of water, a shallow stream with actual green grass nearby. You could cry from relief. Everyone collapses around it, washing faces, soaking feet, letting the oxen drink deep. The sound of splashing feels almost holy. Dinner is simple, beans again, and a bit of dried meat, traded from another wagon. You chew in silence, watching the sun drop low and red over the plains. The horizon glows like a dying ember. Someone remarks that it looks like the sky's on fire. You don't disagree. Then the real fire starts. It begins as a flicker on the western ridge, maybe half a mile away. At first, you think it's just the sunset, playing tricks. But then the glow grows brighter, orange tongues licking upward, faster, hungrier. Someone shouts, "Prairie fire!" Panic moves through the camp like lightning. People scramble to hitch oxen, throw blankets over wagons, grab whatever they can carry. The captain yells for everyone to move toward the creek. Now, you run, your lungs burning from dust and fear. Behind you, the sound is like thunder made of crackling wood. The wind feeds the fire, driving it toward you in waves. You can feel the heat on your back before you even reach the water. Without thinking, you wade in. The creek is shallow, but enough. You drop to your knees, soaking your clothes, splashing water on your face. As flames roar past on both sides, the air turns black. Sparks rain down like fireflies gone mad. You hold your breath and pray, not to survive, but just not to scream. Minutes stretch into eternity. Then, slowly, the fire moves on. What's left behind looks like the surface of another planet. Ash, smoke, glowing embers scattered like dying stars. Historians still argue whether prairie fires were common or exceptional during the trail years. Some say they came with every dry season. Others believe most were accidental, sparked by carelessness or lightning, or maybe fate having a dark sense of humor. You stand, soaked and trembling, staring at what's left of the camp. A few wagons are scorched but intact. The oxen are alive. Miraculously, no one's missing. Someone jokes weakly, "Guess supper's smoked." That earns a small laugh, your second of the night, and you cling to it like a lifeline. When the wind dies, the prairie smells like burned sage and charred grass. The stars appear again, brighter than ever, indifferent as always. You sit by what used to be the campfire, holding a tin cup of lukewarm water, and realize your clothes are streaked with soot. You look like a ghost who hasn't decided where to haunt yet. Your third joke slips out before you can stop it. On the bright side, the mosquitoes are definitely dead. This time, laughter rolls through the survivors. Soft, shaky, but real. You all sleep near the creek that night, too tired to move. The ground is still warm beneath you, radiating leftover fire. You stare into the dark until your eyes blur, thinking about the bison, the fire, the endless dust. The trail keeps throwing tests at you, as if trying to see what part of your humanity will crack first. And yet, somehow you're still here, breathing, laughing, moving forward. That's what survival looks like now. Not bravery, not triumph, just stubbornness, wrapped in ash and dust. When dawn comes, the prairie still smells like ashes. You wake up coughing, eyes gritty, hair stiff with soot. The creek beside you has turned gray, littered with charred leaves and the faint shimmer of dead insects. You wash your face anyway. It feels almost luxurious compared to the smoke of last night. Everyone moves slower this morning. The oxen groan as they're yoked, their hides streaked with soot and mud. You can see ribs on a few of them now, sharp as warning signs, feeds running low, and you can feel it in their sluggish pace. The wagons creak forward like old bones. Historians still argue whether animals or humans suffered more on the trail. Diaries often speak of beloved beasts that died just miles short of salvation. Others wrote about replacing oxen with mules, or even cows, when desperation hit. The line between partner and tool blurred until it broke. You trudge beside your wagon, the trail crunching underfoot, and you can almost hear the oxen breathing in rhythm with you, labored, weary, determined. You've stopped thinking of them as animals. They're fellow travelers now, fellow victims. By mid-morning, you pass a wrecked wagon lying half buried in dust. The canvas is burned away, leaving only the blackened skeleton of what once carried someone's life. A cracked porcelain doll sits half melted in the ashes. You stop just long enough to stare before moving on. The prairie doesn't allow pauses for long. The quirky tidbit of the day: emigrants often named their oxen, giving them titles like Old Duke, Blue, or Faithful. Some even held mock funerals when one died, complete with songs or short eulogies. You can't imagine doing that now. You barely have energy to mourn people, let alone livestock, but you understand why they did. Out here, any companion with a heartbeat feels like family. The trail starts to climb, slowly at first, then steeply, the Platte River fades behind you, and the ground turns rocky, the grass thinning to wiry tufts. You can see the faint shimmer of mountains far ahead. That sight should be inspiring. Instead, it's exhausting. You realize how far you still have to go, and how heavy the word Oregon feels when spoken aloud. Someone mutters, "If the trail doesn't kill us, the boredom will." That earns your first joke of the day. At least boredom burns fewer calories. The laughter it gets is ragged but grateful. By afternoon, the heat returns with vengeance. The air feels sharp, metallic. Every breath rasps through your throat like sandpaper. The oxen stumble more often now. You stop every few miles to water them, but the streams are shrinking to muddy trickles. One of the calves lies down and won't get up again. Its owner tries coaxing, shouting, even crying. Nothing works. Eventually, he pulls out a pistol. Nobody looks when the shot rings out. Historians still argue whether the overlanders' compassion for animals waned or deepened with hardship. You suspect both. Grief out here mutates. It becomes practical. When one ox dies, the others get lighter loads, more water. The trail teaches you to weep quickly, then move on. As the sun dips low, the wagon train halts near a scattering of black rock outcrops. Someone calls them chimneys. The stone rising eerily from the plains like broken teeth. You help set camp among them, the wind whistling through their cracks. The sound is haunting, like the earth whispering secrets it shouldn't. Dinner is meager. A handful of beans, a spoonful of bacon grease, and the last scrap of biscuit. You chew slowly, pretending it's enough. A woman across the fire starts crying softly into her hands. Nobody asks why. There's only one reason anymore. You distract yourself by checking the oxen again. Old Tom, your lead beast, is limping. His front hoof cracked. You kneel beside him, pressing your hand against his flank. His hide trembles beneath your palm, hot with exhaustion. You whisper, "Hang on, buddy. We're almost there." You don't believe it, but you say it anyway. The stars rise clear and sharp. The Milky Way stretched like spilled salt across black velvet. For a few moments, it's almost beautiful again. Then the wind shifts, bringing a smell you've learned to dread. Sweet, faint, unmistakable death. One of the oxen hasn't made it through the night. By morning, you're digging again. This time, not for a human. The ground is hard, but you take your time, each shovelful slower than the last. The captain wants to move on, but you insist on a few extra minutes. Old Tom deserves at least that much. You mark the spot with a single stone. No words, just a nod. Historians still argue whether these small acts of respect were resistance or ritual, defiance against the trail or indifference. Either way, it feels right. As the train moves again, you feel the absence in every jolt of the wagon. The new ox struggles to pull the load, and you can almost hear the land laughing softly at your persistence. The sun beats down, relentless. Your boots feel like ovens. The horizon ripples, the line between ground and sky melting into a mirage. Somewhere ahead, you spot a shadow moving. Buffalo again, maybe, or just heat tricking your eyes. Out here, reality bends easily. Your second joke slips out as the wagon hits another rut. If my bones rattle any louder, I'll start charging admission. That earns a faint chuckle from the person beside you. It's enough. When night comes, you dream of green fields, thick grass, soft rain, the smell of home cooking. You wake up with tears on your face and dust on your tongue. The fires burned out, leaving only glowing coals. You stir them absently with a stick, watching tiny sparks float upward like lost wishes. And then, softly, you whisper your third joke to the dark. If I ever make it to Oregon, I'm never walking again. The night doesn't answer, but you swear you hear the faint sound of a snort from one of the oxen, as if even they find your humor ridiculous. You smile, pull the blanket tighter, and drift off again. Tomorrow, there will be more miles, more dust, more ghosts to step over. But tonight, for a moment, you let yourself believe the animals still dream too, of grass that never ends, and roads that finally stop. The next leg of the trail begins with rocks. So many rocks that you start to believe the earth itself is trying to trip you. Wheels groan, axles scream, and the air fills with the rhythmic crack of whips and curses. You're entering the foothills now, and the prairie has traded its rolling calm for stubborn defiance. Each mile feels steeper than the last. The path twists through gullies and canyons, winding upward in cruel little switchbacks. The oxen dig their hooves into loose gravel, panting like exhausted soldiers. You push beside them, hands blistered, lungs aching, dust rising in thick waves around your legs. Historians still argue whether this stretch of the trail, the climb toward the Rockies, was the hardest physically or just spiritually. The answer, you think, is yes. Every step feels like an accusation. You wanted adventure? Here it is. You've learned to measure progress not by miles, but by the number of times you swear under your breath. That's how you know today's a record breaker. By midday, you reach a narrow ravine where a wagon has tipped over. Its canvas hangs shredded, its loads spilled like guts across the stones. Barrels, boots, a child's doll face down in the dirt. The driver stands beside it, staring blankly. His horse broke its leg in the fall. There's no saving it. He pulls the trigger without hesitation. Nobody flinches anymore. The quirky tidbit of the day. Travelers sometimes used gunpowder and whiskey to clean wounds, or even fuel campfires when wood was scarce. A frontier first aid kit, they called it. You're not sure whether to admire that level of creativity or question their survival instincts. You keep climbing, the sun hammering your back. Your shoes are falling apart, soles worn thin as excuses. You tie scraps of cloth around them, but it only delays the inevitable. You joke, you're first of the day. If Oregon doesn't have cobblers, I'm suing someone. The laughter is weak, but laughter nonetheless. As the train snakes upward, the view changes. You can finally see the jagged tips of the mountains, sharp against the sky. They look close enough to touch, though you know they're still days away. Between you and them lies an ocean of rock, sagebrush, and shattered dreams. By late afternoon, the air grows cooler. It's a relief until you realize what that means. You're climbing fast. You pause at the crest of a ridge to catch your breath and glance back. The prairie stretches behind you, endless and flat, golden under the dying sun. You've crossed nearly half a continent. The thought should fill you with pride. Instead, it feels absurd. You've survived disease, hunger, storms, fire, and yet Oregon still sounds like a rumor. Historians still argue whether emigrants were truly prepared for mountain travel or just too stubborn to quit. Most had never seen peaks before, much less crossed them with wagons. You suspect the latter. Stubbornness is the only currency that still holds value out here. The The descent on the other side is worse than the climb. Wagons tip, wheels lock, ropes snap. You find yourself digging your heels into gravel, gripping the wagon's side as it slides downhill. The oxen grunt, eyes rolling, the wooden frame trembling like it's alive. When you finally reach level ground again, your hands are bleeding from holding on too tight. At camp that night, the wind cuts cold through your clothes. Everyone gathers close to the fire, soaking up what warmth remains. Someone passes around a tin of beans and a scrap of salted meat. You chew slowly, pretending it's stew. Then the music starts. One man with a fiddle, another tapping rhythm on a tin pan. The tune is rough, but real, winding through the camp like a heartbeat. You find your foot tapping without permission. For the first time in days, people smile. Some even dance, if you can call it that. Stumbling circles around the fire, laughter bubbling up between breaths. Your second joke slips out mid-song. If dancing burns calories, I'm suing the trail for fraud. That earns a few honest laughs. The music grows louder, the mood lighter. For a few minutes, you almost forget where you are. Then, as the song fades, the cold comes rushing back. The fire dies low, stars spill across the sky, and silence settles like frost. You lie down beside the wagon, staring up at constellations you barely recognize. The Milky Way stretches above you like a glowing road, maybe the only trail more endless than the one under your boots. Historians still argue whether moments like these, music, laughter, small flashes of humanity, were acts of rebellion or necessity. Out here, you think, they're both. A laugh is just a prettier kind of defiance. You drift toward sleep, your muscles twitching with exhaustion. The wind howls softly through the rocks, whispering in a dozen languages older than memory. You wonder if the mountains are watching you, judging your intrusion, measuring your will. You whisper back, "We're just passing through." Before sleep takes you, you toss one last joke into the darkness. If anyone asks, tell them I climbed a mountain on purpose. A soft chuckle escapes your lips. The oxen snort nearby, unimpressed as always. Tomorrow there will be more climbing, more sliding, more aching. But tonight, there's still firelight flickering against your face. Still stars above you that don't care how far you've become or how far you have left to go. You close your eyes, and for once, it feels like rest, not surrender, just a pause between mountains. Morning arrives, thin and pale, the air sharp enough to bite. Your breath comes out in faint white clouds as you crawl from beneath your blanket. The nights have turned cold now, mountain cold. Your joints ache, and the wagon canvas crackles stiff with frost. The prairie seems a lifetime ago. You warm your hands near the dying fire, the embers glowing like tired hearts. Someone passes you a tin of coffee, bitter and lukewarm, but it might as well be nectar. You sip slowly, letting it thaw your insides. The world feels smaller up here, squeezed between stone and sky. Historians still argue whether emigrants timed their crossings wisely or simply hoped for mercy from the weather. Judging by the frost creeping across your boots, mercy isn't trending this season. The day begins with a climb so steep, you wonder how wagons even attempt it. The oxen grunt and strain, hooves scraping rock, ropes groaning as people push from behind. The air thins, your chest tightens. You stop every few steps to catch your breath, heart hammering in your throat. The captain shouts, "Keep it moving, storm's brewing." You look up and see clouds massing above the peaks, dark, heavy, and coming fast. By noon, the first flakes fall. Just a few at first, lazy and harmless. Then more. Within an hour, the wind shifts and the snow becomes a blinding curtain. You can barely see the wagon in front of you. Someone yells for tarps, someone else for prayer. You do both. The quirky tidbit of the day. Travelers often used buffalo chips, yes, dried dung, to fuel fires when wood ran out. It burns hot and steady, though you try not to think about the smell. You'll take warmth, however it comes. The storm howls louder, erasing sound and direction. You huddle beside your wagon, wrapped in a wet blanket, trying to keep the fire alive. Sparks dance wildly before vanishing into white chaos. Snow piles on your shoulders, melts down your neck, freezes again. Your teeth chatter so hard it hurts. Historians still argue whether these mountain storms were survivable by skill or just luck. Reading about them later, you'd assume they lasted hours. Living through one, you learn they stretch time itself. Minutes feel like days. When the wind finally weakens, the world emerges ghost-like. Every tree frosted, every wagon half buried. The silence afterward is enormous. You dig yourself free, body stiff, hands numb. Around you, people stir like statues thawing. A child cries somewhere. It's the most human sound you've heard in hours. You help dig out the oxen. Their bodies steam under the rising sun, sides heaving, eyes dull. You whisper soft nonsense to calm them. They probably don't understand, but it comforts you anyway. Your first joke of the day slips out as you knock snow off your hat. Well, at least the dust problem's solved. It earns shaky laughter. Even humor sounds brittle in this cold. The wagons move again, slower than ever. Snow crunches under wheels. The trail winds between dark pines and jagged cliffs, each turn revealing another stretch of impossible. You stop thinking about Oregon. It's become myth, like El Dorado or affordable rent. All you want now is a day that doesn't hurt. By late afternoon, the sky clears, revealing peaks so close you could reach out and touch their frozen faces. Sunlight spills over them, dazzling and cruel. The reflection off the snow makes your eyes water. You squint until the landscape becomes a blur of white and blue. You make camp early, near a cluster of pines that offer a little shelter. Fires crackle, the smell of smoke mingling with pine sap and wet wool. Dinner is thin stew, beans again, with a sliver of jerky. You eat it like a feast. Someone starts a story about seeing ghosts on the trail, spirits of those who didn't make it, walking beside the wagons at night. They follow us, the storyteller whispers, eyes gleaming in the firelight. Because they can't go forward or back. You shiver, not entirely from the cold. Then, to cut the tension, you offer your second joke. If I see a ghost, I'm handing it my share of beans. The laughter that follows is loud, grateful, a way to banish fear. Afterward, silence settles again, softer this time. The fire pops and sighs. You stare into the flames, watching them twist and fold like living things. For a moment, you think about home, the smell of bread baking, the sound of rain on real roofs. Then the wind shifts, bringing you back to the mountains and the endless white. Historians still argue whether emigrants found beauty in all this hardship. Some journals gush about sublime grandeur and the hand of Providence. Others curse every rock and snowflake. You suspect the truth is both. Awe and agony are twin threads in the same rope. You crawl under your blanket, the ground hard beneath you, your breath forming tiny clouds that vanish into the night. The stars here look sharper, closer, as if you could pluck one out and keep it in your pocket for warmth. You wonder how many travelers before you stared at the same constellations, promising themselves they'd make it through the next day. Before sleep, you murmur your third joke to no one in particular. If snow is supposed to purify, I must be a saint by now. The line makes you chuckle, a sound half laugh, half sigh. The fire dies low. The wind hums through the pines like a lullaby in a foreign language. You pull your blanket tighter and close your eyes. Somewhere beyond these peaks lies the promise of green valleys and gentle rain. But for tonight, survival is enough. Morning cracks open with that strange mountain stillness, the kind that feels less like peace and more like the world holding its breath. You wake stiff, covered in a thin crust of frost, and when you sit up, the air bites your face with a feral grin. The fire's gone out. The ashes are white as bone. You flex your fingers and watch them move slowly, like reluctant soldiers reporting for duty. The mountains aren't done with you. The trail climbs again, steeper, narrower, twisting between walls of granite that make you feel small enough to vanish. Your boots crunch over snow crust, slipping on hidden ice. The oxen struggle. Their breaths come out in thick plumes. Every sound echoes, creaks, curses, the dull thud of hooves. Historians still argue whether emigrants should have taken alternate southern routes to avoid these ranges altogether. Some say the mountain paths were suicide missions. Others insist they were tests of grit that defined the American spirit. You decide historians must not have had to push a wagon through sleet with numb fingers. As the day stretches on, the wind picks up again. It howls through the rocks like a choir of wolves, shrill and endless. Snow flurries whip sideways, stinging your face. You lean into it, head down, eyes squinting through the blur. The captain shouts, "Keep tight, stay on the path." But the path has disappeared under snow, and you march forward, mostly on faith. At one point, you pass a wagon half buried near a slope. Its wheels stick out like broken ribs. A small wooden crate lies open nearby, contents scattered, frozen in place. You catch sight of a porcelain teacup rim peeking from the snow, delicate and absurd against the white wasteland. Someone once packed it carefully, imagining Oregon mornings, calm breakfasts, sunlight through new windows. Now, it's just another fossil of hope. You mutter your first joke of the day, voice muffled by your scarf. Next time I'm bringing paper plates. It earns a weak laugh from the person trudging beside you. Out here, humor is lighter than firewood, and just as necessary. By mid-afternoon, you reach a narrow pass where the wind funnels through with brutal precision. Every gust knocks the breath from your lungs. You and the others take turns hauling wagons with ropes, bodies leaning backward like stubborn marionettes. The ropes cut into your palms, the fibers burning grooves into your skin. Historians still argue whether oxen or mules fared better on the trail. Oxen were slow but steady, mules faster but more fragile. Watching your team stagger forward, you think the real answer is whichever one hasn't collapsed yet. Finally, as the sun begins to fall, you crest the ridge, and there, spread before you in dizzying distance, is the other side of the mountains. A vast valley unfolds, shimmering faintly under the sunset. For a second, you forget the cold. The view is so big, It almost hurts to look at. The horizon feels infinite again. You stand there, trembling, not from fear this time, but something stranger. Relief, pride, maybe disbelief that you're still upright. The others gather beside you, quiet, faces lit by pink and gold light. Nobody says anything for a long while. Then someone whispers, "We're through," but you know better. Through doesn't mean done. It just means the next misery hasn't shown itself yet. You begin the descent cautiously. The slope is treacherous, half rock, half mud from melted snow. Wagons groan as you chain their wheels, letting them slide slow. More than once, someone loses footing and tumbles, saved only by the ropes. Your muscles scream, but you keep moving. Stopping feels more dangerous than falling. Halfway down, one of the oxen slips and crashes to its knees. You rush forward, shouting, but it's no use. Its leg twists wrong, bone jutting. The wagon captain swears softly and draws his pistol. You look away before the sound comes. The silence after feels heavy enough to bury you. That night, camp sits in the shelter of pines, surrounded by melting snow. Fires crackle weakly, smoke rising straight up into the still air. The stew tonight is little more than broth and desperation. You drink it anyway, grateful for the heat. Someone pulls out a harmonica, plays slow, wandering notes. It's not a tune, just a sound, a reminder that music still exists, even here. You close your eyes, letting it wrap around you like a frayed blanket. Your second joke slips out lazily between breaths. If Oregon doesn't have hot baths, I'm going straight back. The group chuckles, low and tired. It's enough to ease the tightness in the air. As the stars rise, you stretch out beside the dying fire. The sky above the valley seems enormous now, black velvet strewn with a billion sparks. You trace constellations with your eyes, not sure which is which anymore. Maybe you're making up new ones. That one, you whisper, looks like an ox that didn't quit. Someone nearby laughs softly. Historians still argue whether those who reached Oregon were heroes or fools. Maybe both. Maybe it takes equal parts courage and madness to cross a continent with little more than a dream and a wagon full of salted pork. You can't decide which you are yet. Before sleep takes you, you murmur your third joke to the stars. They should not be called it the Oregon Trial, not trail. The night doesn't disagree. You drift off to the sound of wind whispering through pines. Softer now, almost kind. The cold presses close, but not cruelly. You've earned its respect, or maybe it's just waiting for morning to test you again. Either way, you sleep, face turned toward the promise of that green valley glimmering somewhere beyond the dark. The morning sun creeps slowly over the ridge, spilling gold across the camp, like it's trying to apologize for the last few days. You wake, with your face half buried in your blanket, the smell of damp pine and smoke heavy in the air. For once, it's not freezing. For once, you can feel your fingers. That alone feels like a small miracle. You stretch, bones crackling, and glance around. People are stirring, some humming, some coughing, some just staring blankly into their coffee cups. But there's a lightness here, faint but real. Maybe it's the thinner snow, or the fact that the valley ahead looks friendlier than the jagged peaks behind. You can almost imagine that this leg of the journey might be kinder. Almost. You help pack up camp, rolling the stiff canvas, hitching the oxen. The animals seem calmer too, heads bowed, but steady. Someone jokes that even they're starting to believe Oregon exists. You laugh because it's easier than arguing. The road today dips and winds through a corridor of tall evergreens. The air smells alive. Damp soil, pine resin, distant water. You take your first deep, clean breath in weeks. It makes your chest ache in the best way. Historians still argue whether travelers ever truly appreciated moments like this, small bursts of beauty amid the misery, or if nostalgia later rewrote the suffering into something poetic. Out here, you can't tell the difference. Beauty and pain feel braided, inseparable, the quirky tidbit of the day. Some emigrants wrote that mountain streams were so clear they used them as mirrors to shave or to fix hair before moving on. You try it at the next creek and see a face that looks 20 years older than when you started. You mutter, "Handsome devil," just to prove you still can. The trail flattens, and by midday, the group halts near a meadow that actually looks welcoming. Someone shouts, "Rest stop!" And for once, no one groans. Blankets are spread, boots kicked off, and for the first time in what feels like forever, people smile without irony. You lie back in the grass, warm sunlight against your face, eyes half closed. There's laughter nearby, a rare, unforced sound. Two children chase each other around a stump while their mother scolds half-heartedly. A man tunes a fiddle, the notes wobbling, sweet and shy. You think, this is what hope sounds like, when it forgets it's supposed to be careful. Then comes your first joke of the day, whispered up at the sky. If heaven looks like this, it better come with softer beds. Someone hears you and snorts, tossing you a biscuit that's only half burned. You pretend it's gourmet. The afternoon drifts by in a haze of small kindnesses. Someone patches your sleeve. Someone else shares the last of their coffee. The captain even cracks a grin, an event rarer than rain in July. You realize that misery on the trail doesn't just crush people, it fuses them together like metal in a forge. Every hardship leaves a seam of solidarity behind. Historians still argue whether this camaraderie was born of necessity or affection, maybe both. When survival depends on the people walking beside you, friendship becomes a kind of currency, and laughter, the only thing inflation-proof. As twilight falls, the fiddler strikes up a tune, slow at first, then brighter. The air hums with it. Someone claps, someone dances. The ground shakes with stomping boots. You find yourself pulled into the circle, hand in hand with strangers who no longer feel like strangers. The dance is clumsy, chaotic, joyous. The mountains echo it back like applause. You toss out your second joke between breaths. If the oxen start dancing, we've officially lost it. The laughter nearly drowns out the music. Later, you sit near the fire, sweat cooling on your neck, cheeks sore from smiling. Someone passes around a flask. The smell of cheap whiskey sharp in the air. You take a sip. It burns beautifully. For a heartbeat, you feel alive in every cell. The stars above seem closer again, brighter somehow. The conversation drifts easily. Stories of home, of rivers crossed, of close calls and lucky breaks. A woman mentions the wagon that flipped weeks ago, the one you remember vividly. Her voice softens. They lost everything, but they still made it this far. You nod. Out here, loss doesn't end the story. It just changes the shape of it. Historians still argue whether optimism on the trail was denial or courage. You decide it's both. Maybe that is the only way anyone keeps moving. By pretending tomorrow will be better. until it finally is. The fire burns low. Crickets sing. Someone hums the last line of the fiddle tune. The night feels gentle for once, almost like it's apologizing for the miles still to come. You roll onto your side, staring at the glowing embers. Your third joke drifts out like a sigh. If Oregon S not hiring after all this, I'm suing the Pacific Ocean. The chuckles that follow are soft, sleepy, affectionate. The stars wink above you. The air smells of pine smoke and possibility. The laughter fades into quiet breathing, one by one, until only the wind is left, steady, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of the land itself. You close your eyes. For the first time since Missouri, you dream not of struggle, but of green fields waiting patiently beyond the horizon. By morning, the world feels different, lighter somehow, though the air is still cold and the wagons just as creaky. You wake to birdsong instead of coughing, sunlight instead of fog. The camp smells faintly of fried dough, and for one glorious moment, you let yourself believe the worst is over. The valley stretches ahead, wide and green and promising. You've left the hard rock of the mountains behind, trading cliffs for gentle hills and soft soil. Your boots sink slightly into it, a welcome change from frozen ground. The oxen walk easier too, their heads low but steady, tails flicking lazily. You can almost feel Oregon tugging at the edges of your imagination. Close now, close enough to taste. Historians still argue whether the final leg of the Oregon Trail inspired relief or dread. Some journals describe weeping with joy at the first sight of the Willamette Valley. Others admit feeling hollow, unsure what to do once the suffering ended. You get it. After months of surviving, peace feels suspicious. The day's first real challenge is crossing a shallow river, mercifully calm compared to the earlier nightmares. Still, the wagon wheels catch on mud, and you find yourself knee-deep in cold water, pushing like your life depends on it. Maybe it does. The river laughs quietly around your legs. You mutter, "At least it's not trying to kill me this time." Your first joke of the day. Someone behind you replies, "Give it a minute." When you finally reach the far bank, you collapse onto the grass, dripping and triumphant. The captain grins for once, an honest, unguarded smile. The group cheers weakly, half celebration, half exhaustion. You've crossed your last major river. The land beyond is wide, dotted with trees and golden light. You start walking again, slower now. Every sound feels sharper. The crunch of boots, the creak of wheels, the whisper of wind through grass. You notice the small things, a hawk circling high, the scent of wet earth, the way sunlight glints off wagon spokes like tiny stars. You realize you haven't noticed beauty without irony in a long time. The quirky tidbit of the day. Some travelers, desperate for souvenirs, carved their names into trees or rocks as proof they'd made it this far. Historians still find those carvings today, names half erased by time, but stubbornly visible. You run your fingers over one such mark, A. Whitlock, 1848, and whisper, "Guess we made it too, friend." By midday, the road widens. The grass grows thicker, greener. Birds chatter from branches heavy with leaves. The air smells almost sweet. It's like the land is healing itself, shrugging off the scars of winter. You walk with your jacket open, sun warming your chest, and for the first time in months, you don't feel like prey. At a clearing, someone spots smoke, thin and curling in the distance. Another wagon train, maybe, or settlers already here. A ripple runs through your group. People straighten up, adjust hats, brush dust from sleeves. You laugh quietly. Don't get fancy now. Oregon won't care about your shirt. That earns a few grins. Your second joke. As you approach the smoke, you find a small camp of settlers. Real houses, rough-hewn, but standing. Children chase chickens through patches of trampled grass. A woman waves you over with a ladle. Coffee? She offers. You could cry. It's hot, strong, and real. You sip slowly, the flavor almost too much to believe. You trade stories, food, advice. They tell you about the valley. Fertile soil, steady rain, mild winters. It sounds like paradise. One man warns, don't expect it to be easy. You laugh, coughing on your coffee. Too late for that lesson. Historians still argue whether the settlers' optimism was justified. The valley was lush, yes, but isolation, floods, and land disputes quickly followed. Still, compared to the trail, it sounded like a gentle eternity. You decide that's enough. You camp one last night before entering the Willamette Valley proper. The stars hang heavy and low. The fires glow soft against the tall grass. Someone plays the fiddle again, slower this time. A goodbye song, though no one says it. You sit a little apart, watching sparks drift upward, thinking of everyone who started this journey and didn't finish. Graves without markers, names lost to mud and snow. The trail remembers, even if the world won't. Your third joke comes out quiet, almost reverent. If heaven looks like this, I just hope they've got better wagons. The group chuckles softly, the kind of laughter that's more sigh than sound. Later, you lie on your back, staring at the stars until your vision blurs. The sounds of the camp fade, murmured voices, crackling fire, a snore here and there. You feel the earth solid beneath you, the air cool and gentle. For once, you're not afraid of what tomorrow brings. You've earned it. The valley, the quiet, the survival. Historians still argue whether this was truly the end of the trail or just the beginning of another struggle. But tonight, it doesn't matter. The worst is behind you. The dream is close enough to touch, and for once, your hands don't shake when you reach for it. You whisper a soft good night to the dark, not as a prayer or a farewell, but as a promise. We made it this far. We can make it the rest of the way. The wind answers by rustling the grass, low and steady, like applause. The morning breaks softer than you expect, like the world finally exhaling. A low mist curls over the valley, glowing gold where sunlight filters through. You stand at the edge of camp, blanket around your shoulders, watching it lift. For a long moment, no one moves. Even the oxen seem to sense something different. Heads tilted, breath steaming gently in the cool air. You whisper, "That's Oregon," and your voice trembles just a little. The trail dips one last time, and there it is, the Willamette Valley, spread out like a promise kept. Rolling green hills, silver streams, clusters of trees heavy with leaves. You can smell water, earth, life. It's almost too much to take in after months of dust and death. The wagons creak forward, slower than ever, not from strain, but hesitation. Reaching the end feels unreal. You walk beside your team, boots sinking into soft soil that feels like silk compared to the cracked plains behind you. A bird darts past, a flash of color, and you find yourself smiling before you even realize it. Historians still argue whether the settlers cried out of joy or exhaustion when they reached this valley. From where you're standing, there's no difference. Joy is exhaustion. The kind that means you've survived long enough to feel something again. The road winds down to a small clearing where a handful of cabins lean against the hills. The people there wave as your group approaches. Faces weathered, but kind. There's a fire burning. The smell of bread baking. Actual bread. You almost laugh at how violently that smell hits you. You step down from the wagon and just stand there. Grass under your boots. Wind on your face. No one shouting. No storm closing in. No graves to dig. You feel disoriented, like the ground itself might disappear. If you blink too long, someone claps your shoulder. We made it, they say. You nod. But the words don't sink in yet. Your first joke of the day comes out shaky. So this is paradise? Huh. Needs a saloon. It earns the kind of laughter that comes from the chest. The kind that's half tears. You walk among the cabins, touch rough wooden walls, watch children chase each other through the grass. Their laughter feels alien, pure, like it belongs to a world you left months ago. And yet, here it is, alive, waiting for you. The quirky tidbit of the day. Settlers sometimes wrote letters home that took months, even years, to arrive. Some of those letters never reached their destinations at all. You imagine someone back east, opening a faded envelope that begins, "We made it to Oregon. We're alive." You hope those words were enough. By afternoon, the camp has scattered. Some families pick out plots of land. Others barter for supplies. You find yourself walking alone along a creek, listening to the water tumble over stones. The air smells of cedar and wet earth. You can hear birds again. The silence of the plains is gone, replaced by a living, breathing kind of quiet. You crouch, touch the water, and laugh softly. We followed a dream and somehow didn't die. That's progress. Your second joke floats away on the wind, but this time it doesn't sound bitter, just grateful. Historians still argue whether the Oregon Trail was a triumph or a tragedy. Thousands died. Thousands more found new lives. The truth probably lives somewhere in between. A journey that cost more than anyone expected, but proved how far desperation can drive the human spirit. You think maybe that's what survival really is. Not glory, not destiny, just refusal to quit. That night, your group gathers one last time around a fire. Someone passes around cider, warm and sharp. The fiddler plays again, softer now, the tune drifting upward like smoke. You sit back, eyes half closed, watching sparks float into the dark. Every face around you glows orange in the firelight, tired, scarred, but alive. You raise your cup slightly. To the trail, you say. To everyone who walked it, everyone who didn't, and everyone still crazy enough to dream. There's a murmur of agreement, quiet but sure. Your third joke comes out slow and warm. And to whoever invents trains, may your oxen forgive you. The laughter that follows is real, full, cleansing. You lean back, letting the firelight fade from your vision. Above, the stars look different now, closer, somehow. Or maybe you're just finally looking up, without fear. Historians still argue whether reaching Oregon was the end of an era or the beginning of another. For you, it feels like both. The closing of one impossible chapter and the hesitant opening of something gentler. You've carried loss, laughter, and the stubbornness of 1,000 miles. And somehow, that's enough. The night deepens. The valley hums with quiet life. You close your eyes and breathe it in. For the first time since Missouri, your body isn't braced for disaster. You are still. You are home, or as close as anyone ever gets. The fire burns lower now, embers pulsing soft as a heartbeat. The valley exhales around you, crickets in the grass, a river whispering somewhere nearby, the wind turning gentle as a lullaby. You lie back, arms folded beneath your head, and let the day fade. The stars above shimmer faintly, no longer cruel or distant, just patient. You think of the miles behind you, the endless plains, the choking dust, the snow that burned like fire, and realize that every step has softened somehow in memory. Pain stretches thin in hindsight, leaving behind only shape, color, story. Your breathing slows. The ground beneath you feels solid, kind. Even the aches in your shoulders ease, as though the land itself is offering a quiet apology. You can still hear faint laughter near the fire. Friends, survivors, ghosts of what could have gone wrong, but didn't. The Oregon Trail was never the golden road of myth. It was blister and heartbreak, hunger and hope braided tight together. But it was also proof of how far humans will walk for the smallest chance at better days. You trace that truth across the inside of your eyelids as sleep begins to pull you under. So breathe now. Let the weight lift. Let the road dissolve behind you. The journey's over. The world is green again. You made it. Good night, traveler. Sweet dreams.